Hi, I'm Daniel Roth. I'm the executive editor of LinkedIn. We're incredibly excited to have Carlos Ghosn, a LinkedIn influencer and the CEO of Nissan and Renault, with us today to talk about his career and the state of the auto industry. Mr. Ghosn, thanks for joining us. So let's talk a little bit about how you manage your time. You're the CEO of two major auto companies in two different continents. You're the chairman of the largest auto company in Russia. About 1 out of every 10 cars sold you have your hand on. How is it possible to manage all of these companies, all of these people, all of these different agendas, and still be human?
Look, first, I want to reassure you, it's possible.
Okay.
It requires a lot of pragmatism, a lot of organization. You have to be surrounded by very professional people who are going to help you do the job. You need to make sure that you are limiting yourself to the core of your mission. I mean, you cannot do everything. You need to make sure about where you think you are indispensable, and dedicate your task to that. And then in function of this, you start to allocate time in the most rational way possible between the different companies. Obviously, I start with the principle that when I'm in Japan, I'm making decision for Nissan. When I'm in Paris, I'm making decision for Renault. And when I'm in Russia, I'm making decision eventually for AvtoVAZ. I don't sit down in Paris and make decision for things relative to Nissan. I don't mix the different responsibilities because I just want to make sure that different teams in charge feel responsible and there is no confusion between the different companies. So a lot of pragmatism, some basic rules, professional people around you, and at the end of the day, it's possible.
So if there are things going on, you're in Paris, there are things going on with Nissan in Japan. You won't answer those questions, you won't pick up those emails until you're actually in Japan?
Let me tell you, that in general, people don't send the email and they don't ask questions on the telephone because they know that the following week you're going to be in Japan. So obviously, when there is emergency, people call you. But fortunately for us, we are today in an environment where emergencies, whenever they exist, they are being dealt with by your team. And if something requires really an answer from your part or position from your part, if it cannot wait next week, because you're usually on a monthly basis, I'm usually in Paris and in Tokyo and probably on a quarterly basis in Russia, then they pick up the phone or they organize a telephone conference. But this is not a way of working. I try as much as possible to avoid these extreme situations where you're sitting down with the Renault team in Paris and answering phone call or going for a video conference for something happening at Nissan. We try to make sure that things are being dealt with in an organized manner. There are exceptions, obviously, but they should stay as exceptions.
Is this something that you have developed over time, or would you say you're managing these, it was two companies at the beginning, first it was one, then it was two, and now it's three. How has your management style of handling these three major responsibilities changed over time?
No, it's a learning process. I mean, you don't start by saying, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to manage it. You start with some basic principles, always very pragmatic, very simple, and then you fine-tune them with time. For example, people around you, because you're part of different teams and you're heading different teams, that want to have kind of visibility of when you're going to be in Tokyo, or when you're going to be in New York, or when you're going to be in Paris. So one basic rule is to give as much visibility as possible. For example, my agenda now is clear up to the end of 2015. That means I know exactly where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing for the next 15 months. It's not only for me, it's mainly for the people working for me. They know when I'm going to be in Tokyo, when I'm going to be in Paris, when I'm going to be in New York, so they can organize themselves in function of this. This being said, we're in a business, so you need to be flexible. There are exceptions, and people around you are here to make sure that they're dealing with exceptions.
And I've heard you say before that you lead your life almost like a monk, or at least like a knight of the Templar.
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah, no, you have to. There is no room. Obviously, if you want a room for fantasy, you shouldn't do the job. No. You have to be very organized and to make sure. But at the same time, I mean, it's very tasking physically because you're moving all the time. You have to deal with jet lags, and you're down on the plane. People don't care about the jet lag. They have their CEO in front of them. They ask questions. They're expecting you to be fit, lucid, awake, and knowledgeable about everything. So you need to make sure that you're resting in a plane when you're traveling, and then when you get down on the plane, you're ready to go. All of this requires a lot of discipline. So yes, in a certain way, you have to live like a monk.
I've heard you talk about the idea of how much you value debate, how much you want everyone who's working for you to, in meetings, be very vocal. Mary Barra recently at the Fortune Most Powerful Women Conference said the same thing, that GM has a culture of non-debate, and she was trying to get them to start debating. I think it's interesting that you've baked this into Nissan and Renault from the beginning. Two questions for you. Number one, why do you think it's important? And then also, how do you make a debate part of a culture when your culture is European, it's Russian, it's Japanese, and it's way beyond that?
Yeah, well, you know, what you want is to make sure, why you want the debate first? Because you want to make sure that you're taking the right decision. Because you're never sure. In some cases, you have to make a decision, and before making the decision, listening to what people have to say before you make the decision is very important, because you can do a better decision by listening, or you can move into a different direction because you discover something that you didn't think about first. So somehow I would say in environments which are very disciplined, like the Japanese environment, or like the German environment, or like the Korean environment, you want to make sure there is a debate because you want to make sure that you're making the right decision. Because if you don't allow the debate, you can be taking the wrong decision. Some people may be thinking you're taking the wrong decision, but nobody's going to stop you. And as you are in a very disciplined environment, it's going to get executed, even by people who think maybe it's not the right decision for the company.
Right.
So that's the first one. Now, if you are in a Latin environment, which is not as disciplined, well, if you don't allow the debate at the beginning, well, as people are going to anyway express their opinion, particularly if they don't agree, well, they're going to let you take the decision. They're going to start the debate after, which means there is no more discipline about the execution of the decision. So in both cases, I think having a very clear process by which you have a very formal forums where people debate questions and there are presentation about the pros and cons of different options, and you allow the competent people to express themselves and the people who have something to say to express themselves, extremely important. Even if you know exactly what you want to do, it's not the problem, because when you make the decision, debate has taken place. Maybe even though you maintain your first feeling about where you need to go, you're going to probably make a better decision because you're going to enrich it with all the input. And the most important thing, people know that the debate has taken places.
One last question for you. What was your first car?
Oh, it was a used old Fiat, because that's everything I was able to afford myself. I was a student, so I was dreaming of a different car, but I ended up buying the car that I could afford.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate you spending the time with us.